What's up, world? This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. I'm back with another edition of Book Club with my big bro, Tommy Dixon. What's going on, Tommy? How are you, bro?
Oh man, having a great morning so far. How you doing, bro?
I am well. I'm well. I appreciate you asking. And I'm really kind of jazzed up and geared up to do what we came here to do today. So I really just want to jump right into it. Anybody that might be watching this, we've got a few folks that have been watching some of the videos. We've got some feedback. We appreciate that. And if you've been looking for us, we've taken a little bit of a hiatus, and just haven't been able to link up the last few times like we meant to. So I'm really excited, I guess, to be back here with you, bro. So I appreciate you doing this with me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it myself.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So, without further ado, we chose this book, and it's really just really cool to me about how we came up on this book. Both of us obviously we do a lot of reading and get these things, get the books and the things that we consume from different places. And you just happened to stumble upon this book for us in the library. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I went to the local Cleveland and Bradley County Public Library, and I was looking for something very specific. And then while I was there, I took my time browsing around and found a local author's bookcase, which I found pretty intriguing. So I thought, man, I'm gonna spend some time reading different titles by local authors, and this was the first one that I picked up from that case. Just reading in the jacket a little bit, it seemed like an interesting story about Native Americans and some local history, local landmarks, things like that. So I figured just give it a go for some entertainment reading, and I feel like in the end it wound up being a lot more than that. Not just entertaining, but actually learned quite a bit from it.
Yeah, yeah, and it really was cool because it's worth saying that it's not a book that we had planned or even read together in our, I guess, scheduled reading or our book club. We didn't have
Right.
this on our list and didn't plan on doing it. And the title is "Farewell the Hills" by James F. Corn. Um, and you told me about it and kind of it intrigued me, and I found it and read it, and we got to talking about it. I was like, hey, it'd be really cool to review this Joker, right? And found it very interesting. One, just because of the history, kind of the national history, United States history, Tennessee history, um, and then two, to kind of find out that this author is not like when you say a local author, he was from Cleveland, Tennessee, for the most part, and we kind of know some of his relatives and definitely know the places and some of the people that they're talking about. Um, so it was just props to you, bro, because that was just like a really good find and like, man, just really fit into what we were doing a little bit too, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. It was either a great stroke of luck, or maybe it was meant to be. Who's to say?
Yeah, yeah.
But it fits just right in everything else we were reading and what we had going on with our book club discussions between the two of us.
Yeah, and either way it is, to just flow with it, right?
Hmm.
And dig the flow is kind of cool to peep how that works out. You know what I mean? All right, so I ain't gonna get too hippity dippity on you with all that. But James F. Corn. So this guy was an American author, a historian, a public servant and leader, and also like a preservationist. He oh man, I lost his birthdays, but I think he was born in the late 1890s and died
1894.
1894. And when
That's
did he
it.
die?
Oh, was it 1988?
I think it was a little later than that. I meant to have that in front of me, but regardless, something interesting is he served in both World War One and World War Two. He had a long military service in the army, retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel. Um, and actually, some of the James F. Corn papers from 1917 to 1987 are kept at the Tennessee State Library and Archives and is an account of his military service across those decades, right? And man, the insights that I'm sure he gave in that are probably very obviously very beneficial. Tennessee decided it was. I'm probably going to have to take a little trip on my own, see if I can't put eyes on that. Um, and so he that was his military life, and then he also his public life. Tommy, tell us a little bit about the public life.
In 1916, he graduated from the University of Kentucky with a degree in literature and went on to begin his military service shortly after that while he was studying law. After his military service, he was active in the state legislature in Tennessee and was actually the mayor of Cleveland at one time, which he wasn't actually born in Cleveland, but did consider it to be his hometown. That's where he spent the majority of his lifetime and was our mayor here at one point in time. Outside of that, he's known for being a driving force in the preservation of the site at Red Clay, which is referenced heavily in this book, but the idea it need to be preserved as an important American historical site. You can give a lot of credit for that to Mr. Corn.
Yeah, and something growing up in Cleveland, Red Clay is almost a place that I probably take for granted.
Mhm.
Remember going out there on school trips on several occasions, you know what I mean, and going out there with my family, going out there by myself. And it's just a really great state park just on the strength of it being a state park. But then the kind of historical, as you say, preservation that has gone on there to make sure that that story is not forgotten, and it's sometimes a part of American history that does get forgotten, right? Um, and so, like I said, we're highlighting "Farewell to Hills" by James Corn. He actually wrote four historical novels centering around the Eastern Cherokee Nation and the removal by the United States government of the Eastern Cherokee Nation from Tennessee, Georgia, and North Carolina. Um, and like I said, it's part of the United States history that's kind of can be glossed over sometimes. And unless you take a class in college that's focused on this time period, you really don't get a lot of the details of what went on. It's kind of, the Revolutionary War, you know what I mean, ratification of the Constitution, and then you have this idea of Western expansion, and then you get to the Civil War. Well, what's this Western expansion, and what happened with all that? And so Corn does a really good job of giving a lot of historical facts and historical evidence based around this kind of fictional story, right? Um, Go ahead.
I was thinking that it's a fictional story, but he references. There's a bibliography in the copy that I have, and he references a ton of historical documents and sources. So there may be some fictional elements in this novel, but there's a lot of what I would consider to be more than likely it's really accurate information.
Oh, I agree. And like what you're talking about, some of the stuff is written. I mean, it would be accepted academically if you take out the fictional aspects of it. And so
Right.
when we talk about the fictional aspects, the plot or the story is really centered around this family, John Eagle and his family. Um, he had his wife. They had an adopted son. They had two slaves, a man and his wife, right? And that was their family. And they had a good size, but still what we would consider a small farm in kind of southeast Bradley County, southwest Polk County, somewhere around there. And really describes, Corn does a really good job of describing kind of the lifestyle of the Cherokee Nation and the people that lived in that area. And I think that it can be misrepresented a lot in kind of maybe our mass media where Native Americans were these kind of savage or barbarian type tribes when the Cherokee and Iroquois Nation was highly sophisticated, highly educated, um, and really an intricate system of small farms, right?
Right.
Um, and I think Corn does a really good job at setting that part up. What did you think about all that?
Oh yeah, I think he does. He does a great job illustrating that. And I hate to use the term civilized, but that's kind of historically the way the native groups have been referred to. You could look at the Cherokee Nation at this point in time like a much more civilized group than some of the other tribal groups that they had been to war with, and had already been removed to the western part of the United States at this point in time.
Well, yeah, and even the idea of it being much older. It mentioned early on in the book that they were like the second or third people that had been on that land,
Mhm.
before kind of the colonialization of Europeans and such. Um, so just really highlighting, that relationship with the land and with people of that broad landscape, you know what I mean? And really a democratic form of government, an early democratic form of government, right?
Right.
Which is pretty interesting, pretty interesting. And like you were saying, on the historical side, I mean, gosh, dog, I feel like we should have read this in middle school somewhere. Like this should have been a part of of Tennessee state history somewhere.
Yeah, and I have my thinking about that is some of the views and opinions and facts shared in this book probably contradict the agenda of the public education system here and there. There's info in here that kind of contradicts what you may have learned in school. And for whatever reason, there were people that, or groups of people who didn't want us to have that information at that early age. That's what I believe after reading this, and that's it. Take it or leave it for what it is.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, and it's interesting. I'm reading another book about a historical character that gets fictionalized or even turned into a myth, and it's like you say, some of those things are left out, or the narratives are spun to help drive this overarching commercialism or branding of the United States. When we think of the United States as a brand or as a symbol, you know what I mean, and what is maybe promoted as the American dream and how we got there maybe and what the truth is. And then we can think about, I guess to me it's Andrew Jackson is maybe the biggest in this work. Um, and I just think about those old like Davy Crockett, this Disney Davy Crockett shows and stuff where Andrew Jackson was a hero, you know what I mean, and kind of thought of in that way. And we think of them as being standing up for states' rights and things like that. Um, and this certainly gives a different view of the United States um, that really shows, the federal government went back on every piece of treaty or agreement that was negotiated with the Native Americans, right?
It's really it's really heartbreaking too to me to read this and see how much the Cherokee Nation, the leadership, all the way to their great chief John Ross, they didn't just trust Andrew Jackson. I feel like they loved him
Yeah.
at one point in time, and he won very important battles against the Creek Nation and other groups, thanks to the Cherokee that fought alongside him. They saved his life on at least one occasion. I mean, directly from an assassination attempt by one of their prisoners they'd taken in battle. And just the fact that they held out so much faith that he would never forget, because he told them so. I'll never forget you and what you did for me. And then it just, when he becomes president, he did in fact forget everything that they did for him, or it seems that he never intended to actually look out for their best interests to start with. It shines a totally different light on him, and like they held out faith in him until the very end, where the military came to intervene on the U.S. government's behalf.
Yeah, and just he just did all the things as far as like thinking about coercion and these Machiavellian principles of power, where display these virtues as long as it is beneficial for me to display these virtues. And then as soon as it's not beneficial for me, I'm going to reverse course and I'm going to be less than virtuous as long as I'm still benefiting myself, right?
Right.
Because we, the exploitation of the land and the pushing of the Native Americans, we've talked about went on long before we get to this point, right? In our nation's history or in the expansion of colonialization in North America. And it was at one point thought that, there wasn't much use for anything on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains or even the Appalachian Mountains. It's such hard terrain, it's difficult to get across, all these different things. But then when they discovered the resources, right, when they discovered economic value, and first in agriculture, right, in the valleys, that was on the other side. And then really culminating for us is finding the gold
Gold and
in
silver in the mountain
gold
mines.
in the mountain mines, and just a very interesting political and legal argument that was put forward, that really just allowed white folks in Georgia and Tennessee to do whatever they wanted to the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, and it would be against the law for them to kind of refute it or stand against it, and they could be subject to forced labor. They would go be a slave,
Right.
right? You know,
Mhm.
um, very sad. It's a very sad story and a stain on what is often what we like to project as our shining nation on a hill that's more virtuous than all of the world and practicing
Mhm.
democracy and freedom. And then at every chance that we get, uh, we will reverse those ideals to benefit ourselves, you know. Um, and it is sad, but man, how great it is that Mr. Corn did this work and preserved this history when he did, working on these books in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when maybe a lot of this branding of America that we know now was kind of going on. We think about this guy and the life he lived from World War One. He was old enough to really experience and kind of take in all of that span of history. And I just really appreciate that he did this work to kind of preserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Um,
it's an important piece of work for American history, I believe, especially for our local history in this region, Southeast Tennessee, North Georgia, Western North Carolina.
yeah, well, and I think I think you're very right. I think it should be a part of the curriculum in the public education system in Tennessee, right? And you're probably right in Georgia, probably at least in Georgia, if not
Hmm.
North Carolina, but certainly in Tennessee. Um, and it's unfortunate that's missed out on. I guess you know what I mean,
Right.
for sure. Um, but it expands to national history, like you said, too, and really current events. Because reading this and kind of understanding America's relationship with the land and with the people, it gives me a whole different idea when I'm thinking about borders,
Yeah.
whether it's a state border or a national border. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, I think this is a very important work. I'm really excited to maybe read the rest of this stuff, and maybe we might be able to link up on that too.
Yeah, we can make it happen.
That's cool. On top of all this, of all its value historically, and it's fair to say there's a lot of nostalgic value for us because we know the landscape and we know these geographical locations when we're talking about, you know, the city of Charleston, and where the agency was there, and you know Blythe Ferry, and
Candy's Creek.
all. Yes,
Fished in Candy's Creek, whenever we were young. And
yes,
Spring Place, and Ross's Landing and all that. That made it even more interesting than what it already was. Like you say, because we know all these landmarks. And I like that, it references the families that these places are named after, even, the Candy family, the Walkers of what was
Walker
Walker's
Valley.
Valley, now Walker Valley,
Yeah,
that's just, yeah, super interesting to me.
yeah, and so like there's that personal connection for us. So we're going to be a little. We will have a little bit of an affinity for it, anyways. But
Right.
I think that he does a great job in his writing, kind of giving you the description of the landscape, right? I mean, in reading this, like you say, I can envision the rivers and how they come together and where they flow and all those different things. Um, and he just really does a good job of describing the physical landscape. And then he does a good job with creating this plot, this fictional plot within the historical facts, right?
Right.
Yeah. Even at some point, if you just pick this book up, not knowing, if it didn't say a novel on it, you may just take it for a historical narrative and think that these fictional events occurred. Um, it kind of flows pretty well for the most part. Um, Nothing on the other side. The critique is, especially towards the end, he tries to put in a lot of kind of case log, uh, and almost these reports, even these legal reports, of different situations in the courts regarding the activities, which was good for the information, but got a little dry, I guess, uh, for a little bit. Oh.
Yeah, read almost like a report instead of a novel. Didn't seem like it was intended for entertainment purposes during some sections as much as it is to inform you.
Yeah, yeah. No. But overall, I would say that I think he did. It was a very that's like a picking hairs type of deal or splitting hairs or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think overall, um, like the plot never stopped. You know what I mean? And he carries it all the way through and does, except for just a little bit there, it's pretty seamless. Um, So we've done a lot to. I guess we've praised this guy pretty strong, and I would echo that again. I mean, I would
Yeah.
certainly suggest this to anybody who just wants a good read, but then especially somebody that's interested in history or a native of Tennessee.
Right.
Well, what else,
Thank you.
man? Kind of wrapping up. What else we got in closing on this one?
Just to reiterate, there, we talked a lot about it being so informative and the historical narrative and all that. There were some parts that were very interesting to me, especially from the very beginning when we're talking about battle scenes and things involving characters like Davy Crockett and Sam Houston and these guys that we did learn about some to some extent in school and kind of were built up in a way to be like American heroes in our eyes. Kind of look up to who they were and what they did as far as the version of events that we were taught in school. And not to say that this contradicts that as far as those gentlemen goes, but and there's some really good information about Davy Crockett, especially I felt like in him taking a stand in the Senate against Andrew Jackson at the time,
Against
which
the
was almost
removal.
was unheard of for a Southerner to go against the man they called Old Hickory, who the Cherokee at one time referred to as the White Father when he was the president, and eventually referred to as the Chicken Snake, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, the
something
chicken
like that.
snake. Now, the White Father even went back to Washington, though.
Okay, that's what they refer to as the
The
the the
president.
president,
The
right?
president. Yeah.
At one
Yeah.
time, it was Jackson, and they thought that
Yeah.
they had a true friend in him.
Yeah. 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 And it's, once again, just sad that Jackson, especially given that history that he had with the people, but even back what everything that any agreement that they made, any agreement that we made as the United States, we went back on as soon as it was no longer beneficial to us. And still, the conditions of some families on reservations today are horrible. And we talk about human rights issues across the world, or however you might want to say, humanitarian issues across the world. Um, we've got some serious issues right in our backyard. You know what I mean? And all that stuff. But yeah, but I think, man, that is why this stuff's so important. You know what I mean? And especially that this is from one of us, right? This guy's, he is of the area, of the people. He has done his homework. He's done his foot, like he's been out there and done the work in the community, right? The Red Clay National State Park is just, man, one of the greatest places in the world to blend kind of a natural area with that history and preserving that history. Yeah. Hmm. Well, that's good stuff, man. Well, I'm excited about maybe trying to check more out about Corn, and I'm really glad we got to highlight him today. Um, Looking forward, we've kind of, even though we've maybe taken a break from doing the podcast, we've not taken a break from our reading. So we've got some other things that kind of on deck coming up, right? Tell everybody what we're going to do next week.
So next week we're going to make our review video about Henry David Thoreau. We've read Walden, which is his classic work, and also the essay Civil Disobedience. Those are the two works that Thoreau is most well known for, and what I would consider to be very important text is in American history. Um, so we've taken our time studying on him, and some very interesting stuff coming up next week. And then beyond that, even we've lined up our next book, right? Do we want to mention
Sure.
going back to look at some more Hemingway with The Sun Also Rises. Uh, just one good read after another.
Yeah.
And
And it's kind of what you were mentioning before we got on here. we didn't necessarily sit down and plan how we were going to do these books and what our readings were going to be. But to go from this novel, this historical novel about the removal of the Cherokee Nation, and to flow into these ideas in Walden Pond and civil disobedience, and then coming back to kind of this post World War I lost generation vibe is pretty cool, and it's a pretty interesting flow, and
Yeah.
it's good for me to have these ideas kind of in juxtaposition, I guess. So I'm excited about it. I'm really excited to do Thoreau, and am enjoying reviewing The Sun Also Rises.
Me too. I just I just wanted to add on Farewell to Hills before we leave that. After reading this, and especially I guess because we live in the region that it depicts, and all these different places. Now when this might sound funny, but whenever I go out to the river and to the woods and to the mountains now, like it feels different. I
Mm.
almost like it looks the same, but I see it differently. I imagine these people and these incidents, that like that happen here, like places we can go and see and touch. Um, just brings a whole greater appreciation for the area that we live in.
Yeah, yeah. Snow on Big Frog, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you there, man, and I think that's another reason, just highlighting what we've said of why this is so important and why things like this are so important. All
Right.
right. All right, brother, man. I really appreciate it. We're gonna link up. We're gonna try to do another one pretty soon. This has been Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. Peace and love.